All right, guys, I want to talk about roster construction for a second. Let's say that you draft a tight end in the first round, whether it's Kels or Waller. Let's talk about strategy after that. Like, are you going RB, RB, RB? Are you just kind of filling the board? AB, I know you like to draft a lot of running backs. We've kind of talked about that and even put out a statement through the Twitter this week. What are you guys' strategies for roster construction after you start with the tight end?
I mean, so if I go tight end early, usually you're making that play with the idea that you were locking down an elite player at that position where there's, a scarcity of elite options. So you're basically telling yourself that, okay, I'm going to win every week at the tight end position. And so the idea from that point forward is to build a team that can crush at all positions. Now, clearly, you just took a tight end with the first round pick if you went Kelsey or Waller in an FFPC, or even Waller in the second round in your redraft leagues.
Or Kittle. I think Kittle in the
Or
first.
Kittle. So what happens is that now you no longer have that top tier running back, that top tier wide receiver. So from that point on, I'm trying my best to ignore the tight end position unless there is just significant value that falls to me. And I've talked about before, I've had a Kelsey, Kittle build, etc. I'm someone who obviously, does volume drafting. So at points, not a lot, but at points I do want to try and, maybe create some unique builds, some, I call them fun builds, etc. But for the most part, now I'm just trying to maximize at those other positions. I don't necessarily know that you have to go running back right after you go Kelsey. What I'm really targeting is the most elite player at the next position. So if I feel like a top tier wide receiver falls to me, I'm going to go that route. If I feel like a running back who has potential, top 3 RB, overall RB1 potential falls to me, then I'm going to go that route. Definitely later in the draft, in any draft, I like, just accumulating as many running backs as possible. Running backs that I think can help me obviously throughout, league winning, handcuffs, etc. But me going Kelsey does not dictate me going running back, because I feel like I'm going to miss out on that position. If I'm weak at RB2, so be it. Because again, you're trying to make sure that, if it's, your starting 8, that at least 6 to 7 of your starters can beat 6 to 7 of your league mate starters throughout the year on a week-to-week basis. So it really just depends on what falls to you. I think I really kind of practice more value-based drafting at that point. And then you get to a point where, like, maybe it's, you end up going 2 wide receivers. Well, that's when I make that pivot and draft based off of positional needs. But I'm not going to reach and grab someone like, who would it be for me? A Josh Jacobs in the 4th round when I'm staring at, someone like Tyler Lockett or Mike Evans, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, et cetera. These guys, I'm going to draft those guys. And then when I get to a point where I feel like, okay, I really need to lock in this running back position, then I may pivot off of that. So there's always a little bit of transition where there's a teardrop, when it comes to the wide receivers. But you going, tight end early on does not dictate you having to like go running back with, next 1 or 2 picks.
Dio, you start off with Waller back end of the first. What are you doing in those next 4 rounds?
So yeah, you actually spoke on it correctly. I am not probably going to have much Kelsey because I'm not a guy that wants to take my tight end super early. Kelsey's going like the 3rd, 4th overall right now.
In FFPC.
Maybe the 5th in FFPC.
And redrafts, mid rounds, mid to later first round.
Right. Still first round. I don't even think I'll do him with that, but I don't see. I don't value the tight end position. We're talking about FFPC tight end premium, so
Yeah.
I get why Kelsey's value is that high. I just don't. I don't like my builds when I do that much. Back end of the first, that's when you start to see certain running backs that you probably value higher, maybe first round value falling. And you kind of are probably in that 10, 11, 12 hole, and that that even if you skip one, that you're gonna have one that comes back to you in the second round that you like. So in that situation, I am considering going Waller with that first pick, and I like Waller. I like Waller a lot, so I'm not mad about that build. I've even played some situations where I was able to get Waller in the early second. So I do like that, but to me, that's still a top end running back build. That just is where I have also a high end tight end in Waller, or maybe I'll take Kittle in the second round, whether the mid or the late second. But if hypothetically speaking, if we do start to talk about taking Kelsey or Waller in that first round, I don't pigeonhole, kind of like what Abby was saying. I don't pigeonhole myself into a certain strategy. I then start to look at just straight value. You know, I just want to see what's falling to me, because if I have such a high end tight end, and like Abby's saying, you expect that player to dominate that position in all your matchups throughout the season, then I want to also have other players that I can depend to dominate their matchups. So I just want people that just with these high ceilings. And then once you have this type of build where you have these high ceiling players, you can start to utilize the season to find other players that are kind of hidden gems at the moment that can fill in those holes. Guys that you didn't know at the moment were going to be valuable to your team come week 15, they're staples in your starting lineup, i.e. Myles Gaskin from last year. You know, so I do want to kind of, again, like he was saying, I don't want to reach. I don't want to take a running back for the sake of just filling my running back hole because, you know, my team has all these other players. I don't have a running back and, you know, I just need a guy. No, I want to take a guy that I feel like is good value at this point, because if I miss out on him, I'll figure it out later. Yeah. Hopefully my other players can kind of, you know, make ends or whatever, you know, take advantage. So I do like the high end wide receiver builds from tight end, early tight end. I like the way those look, but that's kind of when you decide, okay, I just want to go zero running back. I don't so much like the tight end running back build, because I start to think that's kind of when you start to creep into that dead zone of the running backs. No, what I'm saying, the third round, it depends. That's your Carson, David Montgomery, Swift. But now I'm seeing those guys go in the back end of the third. If you're in the front end of the third, do you want to reach to any of those guys? I don't know. I'd probably feel more comfortable with the receiver. So, you know, again, it's really all about how value falls to me. I don't even mind going tight end early and then considering going another tight end in the third or fourth, or even the second. Like if you could pull off a Kelsey Waller build, oh my gosh.
Right.
Oh, yeah, man.
Domination.
I doubt that.
Like I'm jealous already thinking about it. You know, the potential. So
in the tight end premium.
Yeah, in tight end premium, for sure. Yeah. But again, I don't usually do many tight end builds.
One thing that I do try to avoid if I do go tight end early is I try to avoid, if at all possible, grabbing my QB early. I think it really pigeonholes
Explain
you.
that.
Well, because when I draft, I really draft with the idea that, again, you know, I want to make sure I have a starting lineup that I feel comfortable with. Okay, I don't want a bunch of just like high upside picks, you know, the Mecole Hardmans and, you know, Elijah Moores of the world, and then, you know, week 1, week 2 come around and I'm, you know,
can't even play them.
Yeah, you know, you don't feel comfortable playing these guys, okay, because you know, so I really want to make sure I have, you know, a legitimate build, especially in these leagues where you have a larger starting roster requirements, you know, so FFPC where 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex, or NFFC where you have 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and a flex. So if you go tight end early, okay, yes, you know, you kind of lock down that position, you know, positional scarcity, you're excelling at that position. But then if you go quarterback early and you say, okay, I really love Josh Allen, and you go him in the 5th, well, now you're going to be hurting at your positional picks.
Start getting behind.
Exactly. And so the discrepancy between, you know, quarterbacks from the top tier to the mid tier to the lower tier, I think are smaller compared to the running backs from the top tier to the mid tier to the lower tier, and the same for the wide receivers. So those are usually positions, and this is not, you know, any analytical data. This is just, you know, kind of what I have surmised over like the years of me drafting and what my experience has been. But I think that, you know, ideally, you know, I'm taking a shot at one of those. It's either the tight end or it's the quarterback. Sometimes you can pull it off both. I think when you're doing that, it's a gamble, and it's a gamble that may pay off if you can, especially, if you feel like you have some like value picks later on that you were really targeting that you feel may be able to easily slot, or start for you, week 1, week 2, etc. But for the most part, I think if I can help it, I'm trying to avoid, starting off with the early tight end and then going with an early quarterback and putting myself in a very, very deep hole where I feel like I'm fighting to get out.